Good evening, Cuse Nation, and welcome to the Upstate Orange podcast, recorded live inside the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. It's Thursday, January 9th, 2014, and tonight we're going to be talking about Syracuse's 2-0 start to their inaugural ACC season, a look at Saturday's game in the Dome against North Carolina, some Syracuse basketball trivia, and a whole lot more. I'm Jim Sinacropi, along with my co-host Matt Verkey and our resident college basketball guru via telephone in Cincinnati, Brad Connor. Good evening, fellas. Good evening, fellas. What's up?
Good evening. What's going on?
Brad, how's it going?
Fantastic. How are you guys?
Absolutely great, because we're going to be talking about Syracuse basketball for an hour. We got North Carolina coming to the Dome on Saturday. We're going to annihilate them. It's going to be a good hour. The Upstate Orange podcast is brought to you by Generations Bank with locations in Auburn, Geneva, Phelps, Seneca Falls, Union Springs, and Waterloo. Be sure to check out their mobile banking app or visit them online at mygenbank.com. And Seneca Meadows, responsible waste management for the next generation. Learn more online at senecameadows.com. And by Madej, Maris, and Ricky, your hometown personal injury attorneys. If you've been injured and deserve compensation, call the Finger Lakes Personal Injury Hotline at 315-568-0911 or visit them online at madejmarisricky.com. All right, Syracuse 15-0 after beating Miami in the Dome on Saturday and then heading to Blacksburg to take out the Va-Tech Hokies. On Tuesday night, let's talk about it all with our big 5 questions. Got question number 1 here this week for you guys. The preseason pre-conference schedule, we're in the ACC now, but really didn't look all too much different to the eye. You know, we played in the ACC Big Ten Challenge, but no real different feel to it. But I got to tell you, watching these first 2 games on the ACC network, it felt a lot different. I mean, what are you guys noticing that's kind of shock to the system after these first 2 conference games?
Go ahead, Brad.
You know, I went to graduate school in an ACC school. I went to Wake Forest and actually lived in Virginia for a few years before that. And so I watched a lot of ACC games on the ACC network back in the day, and I haven't watched a lot since. But it's weird hearing the same announcers that I used to listen to when they were doing the games, Mike Hogwood, Dan Bonner, Mike Cheminsky. These are guys that have been synonymous with the ACC network, and to hear them doing Syracuse games is very strange to me. I expect them to be doing, Florida State against NC State or Clemson against Georgia Tech, and not Syracuse against Miami. Do
you miss Dickie Simpkins?
That was something for me. I expect to hear ESPN guys and some of the some of the guys who used to love to make fun of, but they're gone, I guess.
And guys that knew, I think, a little bit more about Syracuse than these new guys do. I think they got to get up to speed.
Yeah, it's funny when
a lot of games wrong.
It's like they're ready for Syracuse to switch to man-to-man at any point now. You know what I mean? It's like they still think it might happen at some point. It's
now they do. They have in both games kind of said, "Geez, this is the best team in the league. This is one of the best teams in the country." But for me, the weirdest thing is the sponsors on the telecast, Food Lion, and Bojangles. I think the ACC is going to have to kind of rethink some of its corporate affiliations because now their footprint has changed, and you can't find a Food Lion anywhere in New York State or Bojangles, which, by the way, we should have. I wish we did have Bojangles up here because it's the greatest fast food chain in America. Chicken and biscuits. You were at school. You guys both should probably have eaten at Bojangles, right?
I ate at Bojangles, but I spent a lot more time in Food Lion. I spent a lot of time in the food line.
That was like the Wegmans of the South?
Yeah, it's not nearly as nice as Wegmans.
Not even close. It's not. It's the tops of the South. Not even tops. It's like the price chopper of the South.
So what about Bojangles, Brad? You ever get yourself some biscuits?
I had me some biscuits at Bojangles before. Heck yeah.
I mean, really good, right?
Good stuff. Yeah, absolutely. I can't fathom Bojangles expanding to New York State, though. It's just something just doesn't feel right about it.
I tell you,
it's worthwhile if you make the trip south, definitely.
I liked Bojangles so much when I spent time below the Mason-Dixon line that I actually went on their website and kind of wanted to look just to see franchise opportunities. And they don't allow franchises up here. There's like a demographic area where you can have a Bojangles franchise, and New York State is not in that footprint. So, it's just this is the part of the whole transition to a new conference that I think is going to take some getting used to. And it's going to take years before we get used to hearing Mike Jaminski call Syracuse games.
I tell you what I was really disappointed was the crowd at Virginia Tech.
Oh, God.
I know it was a cold night and that the students are there, but that was there was 150 seats in the front row available. It was unbelievable.
For the number 2 team in the country.
Yeah.
And
there were blocks of seats in the front 5 rows that were empty.
And then if you saw the backdrop like behind the basket, it was just empty seats as far as the eye could see. And
that stadium doesn't fit very many people to begin with.
The thing about it is that
Rick, you played there. How many does it probably seat? 10,000 maybe at most.
Yeah, at most. It's not a big place. And when I think they had better crowds when we went there. I the students are a big part of that, obviously.
Yeah, big student body, obviously.
And Blacksbird's in the middle of nowhere. And when the students aren't there, obviously it's probably tough to fill the place. And then it's on top of that it was 3 degrees, but they pretty much stink. So that's the other factor into it too. So
we're used to seeing Syracuse go on the road and draw the biggest away crowd for that school. Whether it would be Notre Dame or even Seton Hall and Providence. It seemed nobody was excited about that game in Virginia Tech. But let's move on to question 2. And Verk, you said that we wouldn't see Coleman start again once he dropped out and they put Grant in. You may be right. Boeheim's gone with Grant. Now, Coleman isn't back to 100% health yet, so I guess we won't know if he'll revert back to that. But my question to you guys is, especially with seeing Roberson play so good, is like, DeJuan Coleman done?
I think he's going to struggle to get minutes the rest of the year. I think this was not something Boeheim was, looking to happen, but it gives him an excuse to say, hey, you need to get back in shape. Because when he did get in there for those last few minutes, he looked awful.
Yeah.
He got the ball, he went up and got it, threw it off the backboard.
Lumbering down the court.
He did. He just looked slow. He looked a little bit like he did his freshman year, and he just looked out of sorts. And, I think he's the type of guy who really, his stamina needs to be up to par, and and I think Roberson has a little bit more to offer right now. He can step out and hit some jumpers, and he's active in that zone. So it's another option for Syracuse, and they don't need Coleman at this point. They've proved it, and obviously they struggled with Miami earlier in the week, but Roberson came in and played some nice big minutes at Tech, and he looked pretty good.
What do you think, Brad, about Coleman? Is he done for the year?
I mean, it raises questions of the fit with DeJuan Coleman in this team to begin with, and I think they felt compelled to go after him because he was a local guy and led JD to state titles, and I think they would have been remiss to not take a run at a guy who was a McDonald's All-American in their backyard, but he doesn't really fit the profile of what they've really tried to go after for big guys in this program over the last 5 to 10 years. The long, rangy guys who are athletic and can get out on the wings. I mean, he's not that guy. He's limited with what he can do defensively. He's always been that way. I can't see him not being that way in the future. He in high school had a fantastic offensive game. We've seen glimpses of it, but it's not consistent. And I don't know. I mean, I hate to see him transfer out. I think there's potential there, but he just doesn't fit the profile of what they really go for. And, I mean, Roberson frankly does. And I compared him last week to Keem Warwick, it's kind of that way too. And these guys are slashers, and they can get to the rim, and they can defend on the wings, and Coleman just can't.
I think they're hoping that Coleman could play the 4, and I don't think he can. I thought, maybe because he came in with a pretty nice, decent jump shot coming out of high school and stuff like that. He can make the 15-footers and stuff, but haven't seen any of that, and it's almost like he's regressed because he's not. You're right, Brad. I agree with you. He's not that athletic guy to play the 4, and so now he's playing the 5, and he's 6'8", 6'9". Not real big and athletic in there like a Dajuan Coleman, or you know what I mean. And so, I think he's in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, I think the way he does fit kind of the profile of a Syracuse player is the fact that he came from JD. We got a little pipeline going there, I guess, and the local guys from JD coming to Syracuse. But I think we'll see him in a few games. He'll be pressed into action for maybe to play a dozen minutes, whether it's due to foul trouble or just Boeheim wants to get a different look. But I think, Coleman over this offseason needs to commit even further to conditioning. And I predict he'll make a big jump as a junior year. When Keita's gone, he's gonna have to play minutes. Really other than Christmas, he'll be the only guy who can play center with any experience because you're not going to see Roberson there. So I think the future's still bright for Coleman. He's just still got work to do. And it's a case of all Syracuse big men, really. It usually is the junior year they take a pretty good leap, and really you don't really see excellence until the senior season. So we'll keep our fingers crossed with Coleman. Another guy for question number 3, it's been kind of invisible this season, is Michael Benajay. I mean, when we think about the team with the top, he's never top of mind, and a lot of it's because he's not getting as many minutes as we thought. And a lot of times when he's on the court, he's almost, I don't want to be disrespectful to the guy, but it seems like he's just kind of taking up space out there, but not really contributing too much. Against Virginia Tech, he started shooting. He can make the 3, which is something Syracuse needs, especially in games when Cooney struggles. He's long enough to participate in the zone. Is this guy's role going to increase, or is he going to be 11 minutes a game? What do you think, Brad?
I think it's just hard for him to carve out minutes from the rest of the guys. You don't really want it. I mean, with the way Tyler Ennis is coming into his own, and I mean, he's getting talk of ACC Player of the Year, National Player of the Year talk. I mean, that's crazy to think about this deep into a freshman season. You don't take minutes from a guy like that unless he's, in foul trouble or something like that. So I could see him, 4 or 5 minutes at point to spell Ennis just when he needs a break. And you need Cooney out there because he extends the defense. And you want him in there as much as possible unless he needs a break. So that's 5, 6, 7 minutes there. Add it up, and that's 11, 12 minutes. He may spell a guy in the front court for a couple minutes here and there, but it's just hard. It's hard to carve out much more than 15 minutes a game for him, really.
Yeah, and, it's the same old thing, Verk, with Boeheim. He's going to play his 6 or 7 guys.
Yeah, and, he's definitely in the rotation. He's the first and really only guard that plays, and he's going to play, halfway when they get into that first half and Ennis needs a rest, he's going to spell Ennis. And then he's going to come back in, and Cooney's going to get a rest. So, he's going to play 6 or 7 minute stretch there while those 2 guys catch a 3 or 4 minute break each. And that's about it. He's not better than either one of them, right now. He does bring, he plays at top of the zone. I like him on defense, and we've seen him at small forward a few times. But, yeah, he's going to get his, I see him playing 10 to 15 minutes on the way out. And, he's a guy who he doesn't hurt you. I think he's a good defender, and he's, Virginia Tech, he knocked down a couple threes. And if he can do that, I think that's his role this year.
And, again, maybe another guy who comes back for his junior year and sees a big jump and increase in productivity, and maybe even seeing a lot of time at the 3. You don't know what Jeremy Grant's going to do at the end of the season, and obviously we lose CJ. So and the work he's been doing on his ball handling to play guard this year will only help him. Then I can envision a lineup next year of Ennis, Cooney, and Benajay that's pretty potent, across the backcourt there. So. A question for. Go ahead, Brad.
I was pleased. I was pleased against Virginia Tech. He seemed a little bit more willing to pull the trigger. We talked a week ago. It seemed like he was a little bit hesitant to shoot the ball when he had the shot, and it looked like he was taking a little bit more opportunity when it came to him against Virginia Tech that we hadn't seen before. So I was pleased with that.
Well, question 4. It's time to start talking about North Carolina. It's hard to believe this game's only 2 days away. We've been talking about it before, the day that Syracuse moved to the ACC. They're 0-2, though, the Tar Heels in the ACC. 5 losses overall. I watched that entire Miami game last night, and, less than impressive. They lose to Miami at home. Now, Miami played Syracuse tough at home, but Syracuse won, down the stretch. It ended up being comfortable last few minutes of the game. But they pretty much dominated North Carolina for the bulk of that game. And so now with the Tar Heels coming to the Dome for the first time in the ACC, has this game lost its luster before it's even began?
I think it's, a little bit definitely. You expect North Carolina to come in, obviously, as a ranked team, which they're not going to do. And it's almost like, turn into a game, we got mighty North Carolina coming there to a game where, it's pretty much a game that Syracuse is going to be favored by, 8, 9, 10 points probably, and a game that Syracuse should win, and win decisively, I would think.
Yeah, and I think that the pregame hype isn't what it would be, if Carolina was a top 10 team. But I think when that game starts, and there's 30,000 plus fans in the Dome on a Saturday afternoon, that it's going to have that feel. But what do you, Brad? This game lost some of its luster for you, Brad, or are you just as excited as you were in October?
No, I don't think North Carolina's done much to impress anybody this year, with the exception of some of they beat Michigan State, beat Louisville, beat Kentucky, but the bad losses. That makes you wonder what you're going to get from this team, and I don't know. The proof is in the fact that fans aren't necessarily coming out for it. It's not even 30,000 yet, as I understand. This isn't exactly a vintage North Carolina squad. You're just impressed by the name on the uniform as much as anything.
I think one thing that's concerning is, as a Syracuse fan, is North Carolina's undefeated this year against ranked teams.
Yeah, that's true.
They're 3-0. They obviously have the ability. They might have the best win in the country this year. Win at Michigan State. If you can win at Michigan State, you can obviously win at the Carrier Dome.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're a team that's talented. They got a bunch of McDonald's All-Americans, and they don't seem to have. You have wins over Louisville, Michigan State, and Kentucky, and then the losses they have. It's just like
Belmont at home, at UAB, and now Miami at
Wake
home.
Forest
and Wake Forest at Wake Forest.
Just some losses that Carolina shouldn't have.
And that leads me to question 5. How will we match up with North Carolina? And Brad, we are going to win the game Saturday, aren't we?
I think so. Carolina's funny. They play to the level of their competition, so I think they'll be up for it. I don't think that if the line's 8 or 9, I'd be shocked if Syracuse covered it. Frankly, the tendency for Carolina is to play good against good teams, and Syracuse certainly fits that bill. So I think Carolina will be. They're a wounded animal. I think a little bit coming off of the last 2 losses, and so I think they've got something to prove, and that's a dangerous situation for any top team.
I agree with the danger, and I agree that with the fact that they obviously can get up for the bigger games, but that's also an indicator of a team that's kind of undisciplined. And I had watched a lot of North Carolina this year. I literally watched that Miami game, from opening tip to the end of the game, and I just think that the North Carolina players are undisciplined. They don't play smart. They make bad decisions consistently, time and time again. And they do show they have a ton of talent, and they show sparks where they'll go on a mini run maybe, and but they're not good shooters from outside. They don't, to use a football term, they don't play to the whistle. At the end of the first half of that game against Miami, it looked like the half was going to end. The ball, a shot rebounded out to a wide open shooter for Miami from 3, who basically had time to check the wind and give him a 3-point more of a cushion heading into the half. And, I don't see Syracuse doing that. I never see Syracuse, you see Syracuse play at higher levels of intensity on defense, but you never, see him just kind of give up on something like North Carolina did at the end of that first half. So, and then I compare that to Syracuse's roster, and I think that to a person, we have intelligent, disciplined, coachable, likable players on our team, and I really think that's different. I think it's going to be a great atmosphere in the Dome, and I think we're going to roll them. I think we're going to win easy against North Carolina. I think we're going to win by 25 against North Carolina.
Could be a bold prediction right there.
It could be part of my bold prediction of the week, but what's your take on how do we match up with North Carolina? Give away,
you want to think, you're coming off. If you watch the Miami North Carolina game, Miami played zone the whole time, and Syracuse is going to play zone the whole time, and Carolina could not make a shot. So you'd like to think that's a great matchup for Syracuse, but you never know. Somebody, if Page gets hot from Carolina, he's capable. But they're not a great 3-point shooting team. It's been their Achilles heel all year. Getting McDonald back, they kind of thought that was going to solve some of their problems. Obviously, they thought Harrison was going to be there this year, and he's not. So they're really a team who struggles from behind the arc, and I think that obviously fits well into what Syracuse likes to do. But they're a talented bunch. They're athletic.
Good rebounders.
Yeah,
good rebounding team.
They got a couple pros on that team. So it's tough to say, that we're going to roll them. You like to, obviously they've had some awful losses, but they've had some great wins. So I hope that, I think Syracuse wins. I think it's Syracuse pulls it out by 6 or 7 points.
All right. Any final thoughts on that matchup, Brad?
I think it's going to be closer than we might otherwise think. I think it's going to be talent against talent. They've got McDonald's All-Americans on their side, and I think Syracuse has to come ready to play. And there's a question if they truly did that in the last 2 games. And they're going to have to step up the level of intensity against a team like this compared to what we saw against Miami and Virginia Tech. I don't have any reason to think that they won't. The bright lights will be on, and that's when this team we've seen great things from. But they'll have to take this game like it's there's a chance they'll lose.
Yeah, obviously. But I'll tell you what, get ready. It's going to be another Syracuse infomercial at noon on Saturday, just like that Indiana game. It's like an infomercial for Syracuse University and Syracuse basketball. They just basically rant and rave about how great Boeheim is and the defense and the Dome and the fans and the players because it's just a totally one-sided contest. So get ready for that Saturday. That's at least my prediction. But it's a noon start on ESPN, and it'll kick off a great day. A lot of good games on Saturday. And then for Syracuse, we come right back on Monday night, 9 o'clock. We get a lot of these, another 9 o'clock start at Boston College on ESPNU. Kind of like the 9 o'clock start, but that's kind of weird. Is that an ACC thing that I didn't know about?
Apparently.
Yeah, they do doubleheaders on the ACC network. They'll do a 7 and a 9.
Well, that's kind of smart, I guess. But I like the 9 o'clock games because I stay up kind of late, so 7 sometimes a little too early. You got to rush around.
Yeah.
Kids are in bed, and everybody's quiet by 9, ready to enjoy the game.
Although I like DVR in the 7 o'clock game and watching it later.
Yeah, that's
you zip
true.
Through it,
Sure.
It didn't help me when I was dozing off in the second half of that Virginia Tech game because it lost some of its luster for me.
You got to take a nap at lunch, maybe on those days. Saturday, the January 18th, 4 o'clock, we got Pittsburgh at the Dome. Be a tough one. That's an ESPN. Actually, I haven't decided if it's going to be ESPN or ESPN2 yet. And then Saturday, the 25th, we got a 1 o'clock game at Miami. That's on CBS. And Jim Larinaga obviously doing a great job. And since Miami switched to that zone, they look like it's going to be a tough game. And if the game at the Dome's any indication, we got a lot to worry about traveling down to Florida to face them.
Yeah, I think if I thought Miami had a nice game plan, and they zoned Syracuse, which Tech played some zone, but I thought they'd play more after what Miami, they held Syracuse. How many points did Syracuse score against Miami?
49.
And Tech came back and played more man than I thought they would. I'd play Syracuse in a zone, and and hope Cooney's a little cold. And, I kind of talked to you a little bit about that I thought they needed some more shooting, and then they came out and it seemed like they knocked down every shot they took against Tech. But, I think Syracuse is going to see a lot of zone the rest of the year. And, zone, they're going to cheat over towards Cooney. And, Tech kind of dared Tyler to shoot some threes, and he ended up making 3 of them. He's obviously capable, but they left him wide open.
Right.
And
after a while, he was like, all right, knock him down if I have to. And then Wednesday, January 29th, Brad at Wake Forest, and that's a game. That's another 9 o'clock start. And that's a weird game for you. Obviously, you mentioned you were a grad student at Wake Forest, and when you were there, you could never imagine they'd be playing Syracuse in a league game, but that becomes real for you on the 29th of January. And then
that would have been nice 10 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, Saturday, February 1st is the one we've been waiting for, 6:30 p.m. at the Dome, ESPN game day, and that's Duke, which the 16th ranked Duke Blue Devils at the moment.
It's the first time they've been outside the top 10 in, I forget how many weeks they said, but it was the second longest ever to UCLA.
Well, I'd like to bash the ACC a little bit, at least in terms of how the rankings are, but we'll do that a little later in the show. We're going to step aside for about 60 seconds, and when we come back, we're going to have Connor's Corner Trivia. We're going to take a look at some of the stats and a little Guess the Stat segment for the list this week. Our power rankings, bold predictions, and that's right after the break.
We hold on to the things that really matter. Welcome to Generations Bank.
Hi, I'm Jody Torrio. If you're like me, you've got stuff lying around the house that you want to recycle, but you're just not sure how, like broken toasters, vacuum cleaners, or microwaves. At Seneca Meadows, we have a drop-off for those. Bring in anything with a cord, and we'll make sure it's recycled properly through our partnership with 2TRG. It's that easy.
And welcome back to the Upstate Orange podcast on FingerLakes1.com. Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher.com, search for Upstate Hoops. You can subscribe to us on YouTube. All those links are available at our show homepage at podcasts.fingerlakes1.com/Upstate Hoops. So, right after the break, we always take a few minutes, and Brad hits us up with some Syracuse trivia. What do you got for us this week, Brad?
Guys, Jim Boeheim is matching up with an old friend, Roy Williams, on Saturday. As we all know, Boeheim and Williams have a bit of history between them. Want to see if you guys know what Jim Boeheim's record is against Roy Williams head-to-head in their illustrious careers.
Jeez, I only remember the national championship game. I don't ever remember Boeheim matching up with Kansas other than that one game, unless it was maybe in a Alaska shootout or something like that. I'm going to say one game, 1-0.
Well, they played Carolina. When he was at Carolina, they played too, though, right? Haven't they played him?
Oh, yeah, you're right. That was 2 years ago. He was there. All right, 2-0 is Boeheim's record. That's my guess.
There's 2 other games you guys are missing. One, you should remember very intimately, and there's another that you might not remember so well.
Intimately?
I'll give you a hint. They were both tournament games.
Jeez. Must have been 90s. Jeez, how can I? They were probably we beat them once in. Were they one of the Big 12 teams we beat in 2003? I don't think so. Yeah, they were. So that was the national championship game. That was a championship game though. Jeez, I don't know. It's not ringing a bell, Brad.
Think back to the last Final Four run prior to 2003.
96?
96. Syracuse beat Kansas in the Elite Eight in Denver.
Oh, jeez.
Nicholas Arena. I forget what the arena was called.
Jeez.
That's the Final Four. They beat Kansas in the Elite Eight that year. Kansas was the 2 seed. Syracuse was the 4 seed.
It's funny that I don't have a
57.
clear recollection of that game.
Who was on that
I remember
Kansas
beating
team, Brad?
Mississippi State in the semis.
Yeah, I mean, it was John Wallace, Otis Hill, both had 15 points to lead Syracuse to a 3-point victory.
Who was on Kansas?
Rafe LaFrance, I think. Scott
Okay.
Pollard, those guys.
That little point guard there,
Jock Vaughn. Yeah.
Jack Vaughn.
I think that might be right. I don't have the box score in front of me, but yeah,
Right.
I think that's the era that we're talking about.
So that's 3-0, and then you're saying there was another tournament game.
Yes, one tournament game.
I'm gonna assume that one was a loss
Lost.
in
Yeah.
some random second round loss, maybe.
It was
Sweet
exactly
16.
a random second round loss. It was a curb stomping. 2001, Syracuse
Oh, yeah.
played Kansas in the second round. So coming off Sweet 16 in 2000, where Syracuse lost to Michigan State, practically
At
at
Michigan State.
and you had the 4 seniors had graduated in 2000, so they were left with the infamous Williams and Shumpert tandem in 2001, and they lost 87-58 in the second round of that tournament to Kansas. And it was a nondescript Kansas team, because then they lost in the next round, the Sweet 16 to Illinois, and Illinois lost to Arizona, and then Arizona went to the Final Four and lost to Duke. So not a vintage Kansas team, and certainly not a vintage Syracuse team. And the next year, that same Syracuse team practically ended up in the NIT.
So the answer's 3-1.
They
Bam.
lost it. That was the only loss that Boeheim's ever had to Roy Williams, that game right there. Otherwise, Boeheim's undefeated, 3-1 against Roy Williams. Probably future Hall of Famer Roy Williams.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to keep stats on how many times we've made Roy Williams cry after a game. I think there's at least one.
3 times is my guess.
Yeah, you're right. Probably all 3 wins. Good trivia. You got more Roy Williams related trivia for us?
I don't.
That was it. The quick hitter tonight.
Try to think too much about Roy Williams.
So that's it for the trivia tonight.
That's all I got.
Yeah.
Sweet.
I love it. Quick hitter, because for the next segment, the list of the week, this is also kind of trivia oriented. Play a little guess the stat, okay, with you guys. Got some statistic oriented questions here for you, and let's start out with this one. Which Orange player is currently shooting 41% from 3? And to get your rosters and stat sheets down off your desk, Brad, and let's do this on the up and
Tyler
up.
Ennis.
That was my laptop, so I can concentrate on your question.
Yeah, good call, Verk. It is. It's Tyler Ennis, 41%, and like I mentioned,
The logical guess would have been Trevor Cooney, but
sure,
he
He's
wouldn't answer
higher.
the question otherwise.
and like you say, Ennis isn't a guy who you think of as a shooter, but you know what? Virginia Tech's going to give him a shot, a 41% shooter, give him wide open looks. Okay, how about this one? Who has the most offensive rebounds on the team this year, and then who's second? Offensive
Jim
rebounds.
Christmas.
Nope, he's not either one of those.
Jeremy Grant's 1,
Jeremy Grant's one with 33.
and then Tyler Ennis is 2.
Nope, any guess on 2, Brad? It's not Christmas.
CJ Fair.
The obvious guess is C.J. Fair, but
It's a good guess, but this is a bit of a shocker. It's Dajuan Coleman with 31. Coleman only has 2 less offensive rebounds than Jeremy Grant
It's pretty impressive.
in a lot less minutes.
Yeah.
Now, there's a few games where Coleman missed his shot 3 times in a row.
Exactly.
But still, for a guy playing limited minutes, it was kind of surprising to see that.
He got 15 of those offensive boards against Coleman, or against Cornell.
Did he have a 15-rebound game? He might have had one big game. And then Grant did sit out one game, the opener. But more 3-point attempts.
Jay
Patterson.
Johnson.
Patterson or Michael Benajay? Which two of those guys has more 3-point attempts this year?
Wow.
Since you're even asking, it's got to be Patterson, I would say.
Yeah.
The logical guess would be Benajay, but
Right.
I guess Patterson, he jacks it up when he gets in there.
Patterson 16, Benajay 14. Come on, Mike. Start shooting more, right? When you got that shot, take it.
Patterson shoots every time he touches the ball. So
Okay, so a little follow-up on that. Who has a higher percentage from three of those two? One of them's 50% and the other's 25%.
it's got to be
It's
Benajay.
Patterson.
Yeah, no, it's Benajay shooting 50% from three.
What is he, like 4 for 8?
Well, he's 7 for 14.
7 for 14,
yeah. So it would be nice.
That's great. You add up the 3-point accuracy with the three guys in Syracuse's backcourt. That's as good as anybody in the country.
Sure.
Yeah, and of course you'd like to see Benajay shoot a little bit more to kind of get the numbers in line. But, yeah, I want to see the guy shoot more. I think he can be a weapon for us, and especially in times when we struggle to score like we did against Miami. I'd like to see him get a little more of a green light. But moving on, let's get back to rebounds. Most defensive rebounds, first and second. The numbers are 57 and 53.
Number 1,
CJ
C.J. Fair.
Fair.
Yep.
Number 2, defensive rebounds. Number 2, Baiki Samura.
Who is that? I don't know who that is. Brad, what's your guess? It's not Keita.
I would say number 2 is Jeremy Grant.
Yeah, that's right. Grant with 53, and Fair with 57. Okay, of the centers, of our three big guys, the three-headed monster there, who has the most minutes played? Actually, rank them in order, most minutes played.
I would say
Coleman's obviously 3.
first, Christmas the second, Coleman's third. That's my guess.
Vert?
Yeah, I'll go with that.
It's actually Christmas with
Christmas.
302 minutes, Keto with 247. And I was surprised because you think of all the, like, Keita played all second half of both those games. You know, he's the guy that Boeheim kind of trusts, and maybe that will kind of flip-flop as the year goes on. But we've played a lot of tough games this year, and it seemed to me that Keita was, you know, the one getting the bulk of the minutes. But at the end of the day, I think, you know, Christmas gets those starting minutes every, you know, right off the bat, he's in there for anywhere from 2 or 3 to 8 minutes before maybe Keita even gets in there. But 302 to 247, I was a little surprised.
I think we've seen Christmas play longer, more consistent stretches lately than we'd seen before. I think there's been times where I will look out and surprised he's still in, surprised that Boeheim hasn't yanked him yet. Gives him a longer leash now, I think, than he did.
I thought he gave Keita a nice leash when Keita, he made a bad defensive play, went for a steal in the press, and then he came down and threw it away. And, you know, Boeheim let him play through it. And for about a minute, he gave him a little bit of a longer leash than usual, and then he took him out.
Yeah, and Brad, maybe at some of those times you thought it was Christmas out there, it was Roberson because they look so much alike out there. I have trouble telling them apart, you know, on TV.
That is true.
So, let's see, what do we got here? Okay, who has more field goal attempts? Bai Musakita or Tyler Roberson? Field goal attempts so far this year.
Roberson.
Yep.
I was going to say Keita, but
Obviously, it's another baited question. Roberson, 29, Keita, 22. Isn't that shocking?
Keita never shoots. He just has putbacks.
Right, but I would,
even when he gets offensive rebounds, he kicks it back out a lot.
Right.
He did it the other night.
yeah, I was a little surprised. But, you know, in such limited minutes, Roberson is a freshman, obviously not afraid to shoot it, which is a good thing. Whose line is this? I'll give you a couple here, a couple different lines. Let's start with the first one. 13 points a game, 1.8 rebounds a game, 1 point assists a game, 2.1 steals a game. Whose line is that?
How many points?
13.9.
Trevor Cooney.
Correct. That's Cooney. Pretty balanced across the board. 2.1 steals.
Yeah, the steals is what
I'm going to give you 2 stat categories for this next one. Whose line is this? Averages 5.6 points a game, 3.9 rebounds a game.
Say that again.
5.6 points, 3.9 rebounds.
Benajay.
Roberson.
Raheem Christmas.
Really?
Yeah.
It's pretty sad.
Yeah, especially since we just saw how he's
Junior.
playing so many more minutes than Keita. You'd like to see him average 6-7 rebounds a game. I mean, if his offensive game's coming along, but if he could just be a little more assertive, on the boards and consistent on the boards, I think
He's the most athletic center they've had in recent memory. He's got all the physical tools, it would seem,
Yeah. So, okay, here's a good one. 4 orange men, I'm going to call them orange men, have over 100 field goal attempts this season. Who's shooting the highest percentage? And, we're talking about, obviously, Grant, Fair. Who are we talking about here? Grant, Fair, Cooney.
Cooney and
Ennis.
And Ennis, yeah.
Trevor Cooney.
Brad?
I would say Grant.
It's a good guess because it's Grant, 49.6%,
Really?
and he hasn't shot.
That's generally.
He's stopped shooting 3-point shots. So he's basically every shot he takes a lot of nice, mid-range jumpers, maybe 1 or 2 a game, but most of the time he's jamming it down somebody's throat or putting it back, getting a quick put back off an offensive rebound. So yes, it's Jeremy Grant shooting a higher percentage than CJ.
Yeah, I'm pleased with that. There was a fear that I had that if he was auditioning for the NBA and he'd be trying to show off that he had range out to the 3-point line. And you're right, he hasn't really tried to push that lately. And I think he's learning a lot from CJ Fair of the value of the mid-range game, and he's showing quite a bit there. But I mean, his bread and butter is attacking the rim, and he's taking high percentage shots for the most part.
You think Boeheim told him no threes?
Could be. We got enough guys shooting threes. Hell, 3 guys shooting over 40%. Why not?
And then you got CJ Fair, who's shooting, can knock it down.
I was glad to see him shoot those 15 to 18 footers because at
Yeah.
one point he was just almost driving obsessively. He's passing up wide open jumpers, and he can knock those down.
Yeah, he has knocked him down. And if anything, talk about audition for the NBA, guy his size pulling up and knocking down a 16-foot jump shot. That's a skill the NBA values pretty highly. So,
Sure.
let's see. What else? We got a couple more here. Who has the most turnovers on this team? Now, check this out.
I know this, but I didn't think about it.
I know it too.
CJ Fair.
Yeah.
CJ Ferry kicks it off his leg
Yeah.
3 times a game.
Isn't that amazing, though? 44 turnovers. Tyler Ennis only has 18. He's in second. We played 15 games. Tyler Ennis has 18 turnovers, and he's the second highest total of anybody on the team.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy? I read this week that Tyler Ennis has over twice as many steals as he has turnovers. Think about that from a possession standpoint.
Yeah, you talk about steal to
Creating
turnover
that many
ratio.
more possessions for his team than he's actually coughing up as a freshman point guard 15 games into his career.
He's the greatest. Now, imagine if CJ could just cut down a little bit, we'd have the least turnovers. Anybody in
Remember the one
country.
game? I don't know if it was Cornell, but I remember it was not one of the better teams they played, and CJ was awful. I remember him having 6 or 7 turnovers in that game.
Yeah. I guess they add up, and of course, part of it's too is that the ball's always in his hand. We're always trying to get him his shot, so he, naturally, if you have the ball more in your hands, you're going to turn it over more, unless you're Tyler Ennis. Okay, good one here. Most blocked shots. Who's got the most blocked shots on the team this year? Last
Jeremy
one.
Grant.
Nope, not Grant.
He's got the best block shots.
He does have the best.
Raheem Christmas.
Correct, Brad. He's got 18 to Keita's 15. I was a bit surprised by that too. Just you can look at some of these stats and numbers and say, geez, Christmas is doing good, and then you can look at him another way and say, oh, Christmas is not doing as good as we'd hoped. But 18 blocks. I thought Grant would have been more because he seems to block a lot of shots coming over from the weak side. But yeah, just some numbers. We're about halfway home here. In our regular season, and we're practically past the halfway home point. And interesting just to look at some of these numbers because they're not what you think off the top of your head. And actually, I didn't mean to make us look. We have a Syracuse podcast here, and and we're having trouble answering some of these questions.
Make it look like we don't actually watch these games.
Yeah, because it's not what you would think. And so pretty interesting. The power ranking segment here. Top 5 teams in the country according to us. I'll whip through mine right away. You know me, I'm big on the teams that have no losses, getting in over a team with 1 loss if they got some good wins. So I'm on board with you guys with Wichita State this week. I got them at 4, and I got Iowa State at 5. So I got Iowa State 5. They're impressive against Baylor. We've seen Baylor. Nice win there for them. Enough for me to move them into 5. Wichita State 4, Wisconsin 3, Arizona 2, Syracuse 1. Who's better than the Cuse? Nobody, according to me. What do you got, Verk?
I got Iowa State 5, Michigan State 4, Wisconsin, Syracuse, Arizona.
Okay. Still don't got the Cuse 1. How about you, Brad?
Somewhere I have Michigan State 5. Put them back in. Took Ohio State out after a tough loss for Ohio State. Good game, though, that one.
Yep.
Tough battles in the Big Ten this year. Definitely the best league by far, I think. Number 4, Wichita State. Number 3, Wisconsin. 2, Syracuse. 1, Arizona.
Hey.
Unchanged 4-1. Just brought Michigan State in.
I got to ask you guys again. Syracuse plays Arizona, neutral court. Syracuse is going to win that game. You guys got $500. That game happens. You got $500. You're telling me you're going to put that on Arizona?
I'll tell you what, right now, Arizona is beating UCLA on their court reasonably handily. And that's a 2-loss UCLA team. That's a pretty good team. They've got a lot of weapons.
They held Washington to like 6 points. I mean, what was it, 26?
Syracuse plays, they haven't held anybody 25 points in my memory.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't see that game, but that was a shocking score. But I have seen a lot of Arizona, and they're good. But you match us up against Syracuse, against our zone, and against our guys, and we're winning that game. That's the only reason I got Syracuse 1 over Arizona is because I think we beat them head to head. I think we beat anybody in the country head to head, anywhere, on any court. We'll go down to Arizona and beat Arizona. That's how good this Syracuse team is. So consider maybe a bump up for next week power rankings. If we happen to still both be undefeated, Arizona and Syracuse. I've made my case.
Noted.
So bold predictions. Last week I predicted 2 double-doubles for Jeremy Grant in the 2 games. He had 1, 12 points, 10 rebounds against Vatek, but only 5 points, 5 rebounds against Miami. So I whiffed on that one. Now, Brad said sluggish start versus Miami or Virginia Tech, and then we asked you to clarify, and you said, well, they're going to be in the game late. They might even lead second half. And you were right, Brad. Miami held the lead second half against Syracuse. Got to give you credit for that one. Good, bold prediction. And Verk says Grant would take over the starting role for the rest of the season. Coleman will never return. We don't know yet, but so far, indicators are, Grant's now started 3 games in a row.
I like him. I like him starting.
I do too. And then last week, Zach Young was in studio. He says that B.J. Johnson was going to hit 2 threes in one of the 2 games. That's the same route I was taking.
He banked one in, didn't he?
He made one, yeah. He made one. But ultimately, that was it. And Zach's like me looking for a bold prediction, and you can't think of something. You always go to B.J. Johnson. because you think one of these games he's just going to shoot so much he's just going to get hot in garbage time. So this week's bowl predictions, we got 2 games. My bowl prediction is UNC and Boston College, we will win by a combined total of 50 points. 50!
Wow.
That's bold.
That is bold.
We're going to beat North Carolina by like 27 and Boston College by like 31.
Or we'll beat Carolina by 2 and Boston College by 48.
Either way, I'd be right. How about you guys? What do you think this week for bold prediction?
I think I like Roberson. I'm a fan. I'd like to see him get in there and do well.
Well, I'm with you there. We'll see if he outscores Grant this week. How about you, Verk?
I haven't done it yet. B.J. Johnson goes for double figures.
In one of the 2 games.
That's right.
Yeah, there's a good chance against Boston College, I suppose.
That's what I'm thinking.
All right, so Verk's on the B.J. Johnson bandwagon for this week. Okay, it's 10:51 Eastern time here. Just 2 days shy of, actually, how many hours are we? We're about 26 hours away, 25 hours away from the tip of the North Carolina-Syracuse game.
No.
Huh? Yeah, it's Thursday night at 11, so.
Yeah, 24 hours from now, it'll be Friday night at 11.
Oh, so add another 13 hours on there. So about 30
About 40
something.
hours or so.
It's getting closer. And let's hit up the 2 for the road before we actually do hit the road here on this episode of the Upstate Orange podcast. The ACC in the latest poll, you got Syracuse at 2, you got Duke at 16, and then there's 3 teams receiving votes. UNC, who lost, Pitt, who recently lost to NC State, and Notre Dame, who also lost. It was Notre Dame that lost to NC State. Pitt lost to somebody else. I know, maybe Pitt.
No, Pitt hasn't lost, I know.
Yeah, why doesn't Pitt get more votes? Anyways, point is, what the heck's going on here? There's supposed to be a basketball super conference. There's 15 teams. Syracuse is the only one in the top 10. Duke's floundering down to 16. And UNC, not going to see the top 25 again this year, especially after we roll them out of the dome on Saturday. Brad, you said the Big Ten's the best conference in the country. I can't argue because it certainly isn't the ACC.
No, not this year. This league's an embarrassment. We knew this was going to be a step down coming from the Big East, but, man, this is bad.
Yeah, and he said, well, geez, those Syracuse, Duke, and North Carolina games.
I mean, yeah. Right now,
Guys,
you hope Notre Dame and Pitt are going to be tournament teams, because if not, you're looking at Syracuse and Duke. I mean, I guess Carolina's got 3 huge wins, but you know they lose a couple more ACC games to some to the Wake Forests of the league, and North Carolina's gonna be on the bubble real quick.
Yeah, I'd argue
will that be on Selection Sunday to talk about Carolina if they're 7-11 in this league with those 3 great wins, but a bunch of crappy losses.
If they're 7-11 in the ACC, there's no way they get in.
Yeah, I think
there's a lot of
even if they're 11-7,
getting really heated. But I agree with you. I can't imagine them going in.
I think NC State ultimately gets in out of this league, but you're right. It's kind of sad because we're coming off seasons, and we predicted this. We're coming off seasons where we would play ranked teams night in and
5
night
games
out.
in a row.
Yeah, and it was just such a killer schedule, and we fared pretty well. A lot of these regular season games here in the ACC aren't going to have the luster. I mean, we're going to go through stretches in our schedule that are get kind of boring. Not necessarily saying that they're going to be easy wins. These road games never are, no matter what conference you're in. But it's
we were talking earlier. Syracuse is probably going to be favored in every game they play except at Duke from here on out.
Yeah, and there is a chance, depending on what Duke does over the next few weeks, that Syracuse could even be favored or a pick in that game. If Duke happens to drop one more somewhere and Syracuse keeps winning. How many losses does Duke have right now? 3?
3.
3 losses. Pretty early in the season for a Duke team to have 3 losses. What is it about Duke, Verk? Why?
This is not a great Duke team. People forget they lost 3 great players last year, 3 great college players in Plumlee, Curry, and who else did they lose?
Who did Duke lose last year, Brad, besides Plumlee and Curry?
I don't even remember.
Not Suleiman.
Oh, Kelly.
Oh, yeah, Kelly. Big guy.
So, yeah, they got Hood to transfer, thank God, because this is basically Hood and Jabari Parker. And what we saw against Notre Dame was Parker didn't have a good game. Hood played great. He had 27 points. But, Quinn Cook doesn't offer a whole lot at the point. He's pretty good, but he's, not a great Duke point guard. And their 4 and 5 guys are no good at all. You got Hairston playing a lot. These guys wouldn't see the floor on Syracuse team. So if Jabari Parker has an off game or Rodney Hood has an off game, Duke's really going to struggle. They need both those guys to play well, and they have most of the season. But you saw it with Parker struggling against Notre Dame. Hood wasn't able to carry the team.
What's your take on Duke, the 16th ranked Duke Blue Devils, Brad?
These guys don't play defense. It's bad. They're very offensive minded. They don't have great leadership, frankly, I don't think, and they don't have the guys that are sort of the center of the action defensively. You picture these Duke teams with Wojciechowski and these point guards that sort of rally the guys at the foul line, and they do these important huddles, and all these really important things are happening. These guys just play. They're just athletes that are cobbled together. I'm not sure that this is probably Krzyzewski's best recruiting effort. They got a fantastic, once-in-a-lifetime probably talent in Jabari Parker, but beyond that, they're just a collection of players. I don't think they're a great team right now.
I think what really has hurt them is Suleiman's kind of having a so-so year so far. After coming off a pretty good freshman year, I think he was expected to, be that third scorer, and he's really struggled.
A lot of that can be mental, too, in your Suleiman, because he did score a lot, and then, you lose all those guys off the roster, and now he's thinking, I'm going to be the man, and in comes Jabari Parker, and all the focus is on him and Hood, and all the shots are going to Parker and Hood. And, I said a few weeks ago, I just questioned the chemistry on this team.
They don't rebound the ball very well, and like Brad said, their defense isn't typical. Duke usually is a shut you down team, and they're a talented offensive team, but the rebound and defense is a little subpar right now.
Well, before we hit the road, I want your final UNC prediction. My prediction is a 103-76 victory, with UNC getting a lot of those points in garbage time. I think, I'm telling you guys, UNC's not going to try to slow us down, right?
No, they want to run.
Yeah, we're going to run. They're not going to be able to run.
They're not good
us.
in half court, so they have to score in transition.
And I don't think those opportunities are going to be there. We don't give up transition opportunities. We get back at set in the zone, and like I say, they're not going to try to slow us down. And I just see this as a big time whooping in the dome. I'm going to knock on wood right now. And,
I'm going to go
pass it to you guys.
81-70.
All right, well, 11-point victory, high-scoring game, fairly high-scoring. Brad?
The way I see it, I see Syracuse jumping out to a nice early lead, and then I see Carolina getting hot from 3 to go into half down maybe 2-4. So Syracuse has a small halftime lead, and then I see the second half and Syracuse just wearing Carolina down. I see them winning by 10 to 15. I see it high scoring, getting up and down the floor. Carolina doesn't want to slow it down at all. They've got athletes and they want to go, and that's Roy Williams style. I see Syracuse winning 91-77.
All right. Well, all I can say is enjoy the Syracuse infomercial at noon on Saturday. Well, guys, good show. Coming up on 11 o'clock, that's the hour. We'll be back here, obviously, next Thursday night to talk about a couple of, hopefully, Syracuse wins, North Carolina and Boston College, and Thanks, everyone, for joining us on the Upstate Orange podcast. Remember to subscribe to our feed on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or via RSS. We're online at podcasts.fingerlakes1.com/upstatehoops. We'll be back next Thursday night at 10. So for my co-hosts, Brad Connor, Matt Verky, and our producer, Jeremy Hunt, I'm Jim Sinacropi. Let's go Orange!